Hi, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in the world at this point in time. I am happy to be a part of this amazing event hosted by the Open Security Summit. Thanks to the organizers for allowing me to share in this amazing event. An event where many professionals are able to share their wealth of knowledge and expertise with each other, and especially those that are new and upcoming in this era of IT. Now, with that said, my reasons for this presentation is to give another perspective on the expression, humans are the weakest link in the security chain, and secondly, how this weakness can be resolved in a positive way. Now, before I get to the details of that, just a little bit about my background. So pretty much I started out in information technology as a computer technician, and then I transitioned into network administration, which I spent a number of years playing around with switches, routers, firewalls, Active Directory servers. Then I eventually moved into system administration. And today I'm actually into cybersecurity and the GRC space. So that's in a nutshell my background as it relates to cybersecurity. Now, with that said, my reason for the presentation, as I mentioned before, is to give a different view on the cliche humans are the weakest link in the cybersecurity chain, and secondly, how this weakness can be resolved. Now, in this presentation, I'll be sharing with you, and the takeaways from this presentation is that at the end of this presentation, you should understand the differences between a typical firewall and the human firewall, understand the reasons why organizations need a human firewall, understand the factors driving the need for a human firewall, and also to understand potential weaknesses associated with the human firewall and how to overcome those challenges, and also to understand how a human firewall is developed. So these are the things that I want you to take away from this presentation, and that you can also apply this information to your organization moving forward in developing that defense mechanism for your information security. So first things first is that I want you to have some clarity on the differences between a typical firewall and a human firewall when we talk about a human firewall in the simplest terms. And the idea behind this is that I want to lay a foundation for you to better understand what is meant by the expression, the human firewall. So in the simplest terms, what you have on screen is what is described as that typical firewall, right? That's a barrier or a shield, and this could be hardware or software, normally used as the first line of defense at the network perimeter, designed to protect your devices from the malware changes or malware dangers on the internet. And this is normally achieved by applying various filtering rules and other configurations that block or allow traffic based on acceptable criteria. Now, on the other hand, and I am not the most artistic person, so this is my representation of how I depict a human firewall. So a human firewall is the simply refers to the people within an organization and their potential to become a rigid first line of defense against cyber attacks. And it can also be seen as creating that culture within which persons or employees or business owners value the importance of protecting or safeguarding themselves from harm or to minimize security risks to the business processes. So pretty much the human firewall, these are like persons that are seen as the strong line of protection against certain types of cyber attacks, the most well-known phishing attacks, right? So these are persons who are committed to following, for example, best practices against cyber attacks that can basically protect the organization from data loss. So human firewalls primarily help to detect and to report any suspicious activities in the organization. So these persons are well equipped with the knowledge to make decisions, to act, to detect, to be able to see things that are not going right as it relates to information technology, and to act accordingly without relying on someone to say, don't do this or to do this, right? They are embedded, that's entrenched in them to really act in a way that safeguard and protect the environment of the organization that they work in. So with that said, data breaches or cyber crimes, right? This is a big word in today's environment as it relates to cybersecurity, are on the increase than ever before, and we have read or have heard about many of these taking place in the past months, especially with the pandemic. Now, if I should ask the question, what are some of the things that are common among most companies that have a data breach? Then many persons would say we have firewalls, we have antivirus systems, we have policies and procedures, network monitoring systems, and DLPs and security teams, etc. Right? So, and the big question that I have from all of this is, why are we still having database breaches? Why is it that this is still happening? Right? And there are many answers to these questions. Right? Many persons have different opinions or answers as to why this is actually happening. Now, there are many reasons to this question. However, I selected just one of the many answers. And the answer to this is based on experience, is functionality. Right? And why do I say this? Simply, if you have 100% security, then the business or the organization cannot function as required, especially in cases where it is highly dependent on its network systems and the various services that it offers. So for every ounce of functionality, there is a pound of risk. So the key is managing those risks, timely detection and response, and prevention where possible. Okay, so according to a report done by Verizon in 2021, 85% of data breach occurred through involve the human element, which speaks a lot. 36% of this involve phishing, 11% more than last year. 10% of breaches involve ransomware, doubling last year's frequency. And one of the common and most successful methods used by hackers to deliver malware is via phishing, and of which many end users fall victim. So when incidents such as these occur, oftentimes the end users are typically blamed 100% of the time for these mistakes. And we often hear the cliche, end users are the weakest link. I, however, believe that this is the wrong way to look at the situation. If we continuously, as security professionals, blame the end users without looking at the source of the problem, then we'll continue to have the same issue happening from time to time. Hence, I believe that the creation of a strong human firewall can be that new approach to battling cybersecurity challenges that are faced by organizations. Now, when we talk about that human firewall, this is not something that is new. The term or the expression might be new or more evident now, but we have always had situations in companies or organizations where persons are always being trained, are being notified, are being informed of the various ways to act securely. However, when you talk about implementation of a human firewall, we're talking about a more structured approach, a program that governs or persons within an organization are equipped with the knowledge in a more structured and guided format. Now, with the implementation of the right strategy, then this weak link idea can be revamped. However, this starts with the proper governance structure, right? A governance that creates a structure and culture in which security is everyone's business. And as such, it is then fused into the culture of the organization, where everyone understands and appreciates the importance of security awareness training and education that is provided. Now, I am just not talking about doing this security awareness training once a year, but on a regular, ongoing basis. And in an entertaining way that rewards its employees and also make them understand the why behind these trainings and the negative business impact of not practicing these safe methods. Very important. Now, organizations have to understand that human beings are creatures of habits, and habits drive behavior, and behavior drives culture. So it is very important that organizations clearly understand that cybersecurity is not just an IT or a CISO or a CIO problem. It's a management problem at the highest level. And unless security or cybersecurity is embraced and supported by the executives, that's where the challenge is. And senior management, you will not have that culture that values security and all of its initiatives to protect the organization's most valuable assets, which are its people, its data, its reputation. And persons might have other things to add to that list. But most importantly, its assets are valuable assets, its people, its data, and its reputation. Now, of note is that as I go through the presentation, I know many persons might have questions, but there's a Q&A at the end to address those questions. Okay. Now, why is having a human firewall important? And according to a report done by CyberReady, the total average cost of a data breach has been estimated to reach up to $3.86 million, and that's a lot. Now, with that in mind, I strongly believe that organizations can potentially avoid those unnecessary expenses by implementing a human firewall in tandem with all the other control methods and security technologies. Right? So while many organizations might rely on all these expensive technology, regular firewalls, and various security systems, a human firewall is one of, in my opinion, one of the best first line of defense against cyber attacks. Right? As we have all seen, most data breaches rely on human error. It always requires someone, most times, someone to fall prey, to fall victim, to deliver that payload into that organization. That can be exploited to gain access. So many data breaches can be prevented proactively with the right tools and, very importantly, the training, the persons that are actually using these systems. And in addition, an organization's security relies on the cooperation of all its staff members and not just IT functions. So at the end of the day, you can have the greatest systems, security professionals, and security technologies. However, in many cases, human beings are the ones that interact with these systems and often act as the vehicle by which these bad actors get into our system. Now, let us turn our attention to some of the features of a human firewall and how a human firewall is created following strategic best practices. Now, this is not cast in stone. Persons have various spins on this. They had various things, but I'm just highlighting some of these features that must be evident. And you can also add to these in your own implementation of your organization's human firewall. So first is that you have to understand security's relevance to their job function as it relates to the human firewall. Members within the organization must understand their security's relevance to their job function. Oftentimes, many persons within the various departments, marketing, sales, operations, you name it, persons are mostly focused on the job at hand and what is it that they are doing, not so much. They say, all right, as it relates to security and technology, that's, they normally classify that as being IT's responsibility. That's not my responsibility. No, that focus has to be changed as it relates to that human firewall. Right? It involves all members of the organization. Right? It doesn't matter which department you fall into. Everyone has to value information technology or security as a whole and how it impacts the organization if they do not treat it in a meaningful way, right? So human firewall must be equipped with extensive and diverse security awareness training and education, especially through, like, for example, simulation, phishing campaigns. It must function as a human line of cyber defense. It must alleviate the effects and impact in the shortages of the security professionals. And as we all know, this is always a challenge within organizations. Many companies can't afford that team of experts. So they have to find creative ways to ensure that the members within the organizations are trained efficiently. They have the various team leaders or champions within each area of the organization who can really provide and act as that support or defense mechanism to the company's operations. Right? They must be able to be those superheroes or individuals in their effectiveness. Now, creating or developing a human firewall within an organization has not been an easy task and is not easy to configure, for example, as a physical appliance, which is a technical device. Remember, you are dealing with people with the different behavior, especially in light of how they see or value the organization they work with. And the reality is that some persons don't care, they are about to leave the organization anyhow, or they could be an insider threat undetected. Hence, a strategic approach must be taken, right, for this initiative to be successful. Some of these activities involving creating a human firewall, very importantly, right? Activities involved in creating a human firewall. Very important is that senior management or leaders must lead by example. These are the persons that must establish the importance of having that human firewall. They are the vital ingredient to orchestrate the strategic rationale or context for behavioral change. And as we all know, if leaders practice and value security, then it's much easier for other members of the organizations to follow. Senior management play a pivotal role in endorsing shifts in security practices by simply connecting the various individuals within the organization. So senior managers should do things, for example, prioritize security training and resources as equally as security technology investments. And many times more is spent on the technology rather than the persons who actually interfaces and actually uses these technologies, right? They have to integrate security posture and resourcing into divisions within the company. And secondly, is that ongoing education and adoption. So on a normal circumstance, or under normal circumstances, not many of us are conscious of cybersecurity threats and vulnerabilities. However, because that human error and social engineering account for the majority of the breaches, establishing a cyber awareness and education within the organization and across teams is as critical a foundation for defense technology, right? So training is required to create the human firewall must be comprehensive, yet simply to understand. And when we talk about ongoing education and training, then this can be developed in the context for employees to, as it relates to risks, implications, and the effects of not abiding by these security practices, right? You want to, for example, illustrate the threat landscape, not only against the assets within the organization, but also against third-party vendors and remote working tools. You want to identify cross-functional liaisons. And what that means is that in light of the various threats or vulnerabilities and endpoints, or organizations or companies must establish a multidisciplinary task force dedicated to strengthening the organization against cyber attacks. And that is therefore very important for employees to feel that sense of welcome and empowerment by the human firewall training, rather than being intimidated when they make a mistake. And this cross-functional team, therefore, is able to help with, for example, identifying risks and opportunities, incorporate learning into ongoing education, develop specific safeguards to be developed across business functions and teams and products in the organization. And fourthly, you want to make it relevant and accountable, right? So this means that the human firewall must be tailored to different roles and needs within the organization. The exercise of developing and implementing a human firewall is an all-inclusive task. And you have to bear in mind that an organization's security is only as strong as the weakest link. Therefore, crucial is that the employees understand how it is that their roles and behaviors can help or act as hindrance to the overall security posture of the organization, as well as their specific responsibilities to mitigate risk. Now, the following measures can be taken into consideration as it relates to make the firewall training more relevant to employees. And for example, gaming could be incorporated, right? You could integrate scenarios that will help these persons to better understand or appreciate what is happening in terms of the knowledge that they need to have as it relates to protecting the organization assets. And fifth, you have to understand that we are dealing with human beings. So don't forget to keep it human as it relates to establishing that firewall. Employees should feel positive about contributing to the cybersecurity resilience of the company. The culture of any organization accounts a lot for how people feel, their assumptions, including their beliefs and overall engagement with the company and its perceived values. So in order for persons in the organization, for there to be improvement in the security culture, pretty much. Now, and very importantly is that we, as it relates to the human firewall, you have to give high-risk employees additional support. Provide this person with the scaffolding that they need to do things the correct way, and what actions they need to take if things are not done accordingly. So when designing and constructing your human firewall, it's crucial to have a reliable collection of resources to turn to. And each of the following resources provide valuable insights as it relates to creating that human firewall. Now, maintaining an effective...
Can I ask a question regarding the slide beforehand?
Okay, yes, go ahead.
All right. You say that you need ongoing cybersecurity education and adoption. So how do you come from this training or education to actually make people do what you have in mind?
Very good question. So as I mentioned before earlier, is that it starts with proper governance. Very importantly is that executive management, these persons have to lead by example, by demonstrating to your staff, their employees, what is acceptable. And by practicing these things, by having this training, then these members within these departments are now able to see and to mirror what has been done in a secure way so that they in turn can then carry out these practices accordingly.
Thank you.
Okay. Was that sufficient an answer for you?
I think leading by example is only one piece of the puzzle. I don't know. I'm not having the answer for the other pieces. I think just leading by example will not help to make people do the right thing. So it doesn't help that people don't click on a phishing link.
Oh,
for
okay,
example.
I totally understand where you're coming from. So pretty much in my past experience, to get persons to develop that attitude or that behavioral pattern, we normally have simulated activities, phishing campaigns, for example, within the organizations, and training. And then we have metrics to follow or to guide these persons so that they know each time when, for example, they make a mistake, for example, clicking on a link. So just for example, in a technical sense, to use a phishing campaign is one starting point. Yes, so that's one of the methods that I use in terms of developing that behavior within the organization. Starting, for example, with a phishing campaign, practical aspect that they can see how an email looks, what is expected, and all those components. And over a period of time, then they begin to know how to identify, for example, how a phishing email looks, or for example, or a smishing, or how to identify a fake call, for example, from an outsider trying to get information with it from the organization. Yes.
Yeah, okay.
Okay, thank you. So as it relates to maintaining a effective human firewall, because it's very important that you will develop and you will create that human firewall that you want in the organization, but also of importance is that you maintain that firewall. This is one of the downfalls with a lot of organizations. Things are created, things are purchased, and within a few weeks or months, then these things are no longer maintained, like with many other things. So it's very important that if you want an effective firewall, a team of persons or persons in the organization to have that attitude and that behavior as it relates to technology, then that this has to be maintained, right? And this can be done through creating a security-centered organizational mindset where everyone speaks that language, where everyone understands familiar terms as it relates to technology within the organization, and no one is left behind. Because that is one of the things that happens a lot. Persons who are not competent or not familiar with the technology, they feel inferior to using the terms, using the expression to communicate with other persons in the organization. So you want to create that security-centered organizational mindset from the seniors, the executives, right down to lowest members within your organization, so that they are comfortable with security on a whole and the impact that it has on the organization if they do not play their role in terms of acting securely in protecting the organization, which in turn impacts them as individuals if that is not done. You want to provide employees with ongoing education and regular training, right? So it's not just to create the awareness, but to constantly have those creative ways of instilling, having those reminders, so that it becomes a part of their natural DNA in terms of carrying out their duties in a safe way within the organization, and to increase that awareness within the organization. Now, with everything else, the fact that you create a human firewall does not mean that your organization is going to be 100% safe right away. There are potential weaknesses to a human firewall that must be addressed. And this is normally done at the get-go, right? And developing a human firewall normally takes time. This is not something that is implemented right away and everyone will understand and get the principles. So it has to be an ongoing process. And as a result of this, there are potential weaknesses to the human firewall for many reasons. right? There are, however, challenges associated with creating that human firewall, and some of which are, and according to a report done by CyberReady, the 5 most common human firewall weaknesses, right? Phishing attacks. This is one of the most well-known, right? And it says that 44% of phishing attacks occurred in the first quarter of 2020 was done via email. So based on that, in some cases, the malicious actor they even use information gathered from the web to impersonate someone, right? Such as employees. So the only protection against phishing attacks is increasing education and awareness training. That's one of the most effective methods until they eventually understand and get the principles behind how phishing attacks can actually affect the organization on a whole. Next thing identified was shoulder surfing. And shoulder surfing is a form of spying in which, for example, malicious actors, they might observe the victims when they are using an electric device such as your phone, your computer, or ATM, until they are able to get the necessary information required to create that attack against the individual and more so the organization on a whole. And we're also dealing with the case of untrained employees. Many times you organize meetings, and based on experience, it's always a challenge at times to get persons within these departments to be a part of these training. At times, persons do not see the importance of the cybersecurity training or the awareness training that is held within organizations. So this is one of the weaknesses to get persons to have that mindset and to value the training that is given and the importance of it. We have cases, I've seen this in cases where you have device theft or loss. So policies and procedures need to be implemented. Persons have to understand all that can go wrong if their company devices get stolen, whether laptop, cell phones, you name it, right? So mechanisms within from the security perspective needs to be put in place to mitigate the risks surrounding these device theft or losses accordingly, right? We have malicious software, right? Pretty much persons will download files within the organizations or bring external devices that can be attached to systems. So here again, we have to ensure that these employees are aware of malicious software, how these can be delivered onto the company's network, so that we can then put measures in place or security controls in place within the organization to protect against these from happening. Now, once all that is in place, prior to launching your security program that incorporates the human firewall, it's also imperative that the security leader, right? Example, the CISO knows what a good security culture looks like. But prior to that, with all that has been said, a very important thing that must happen within the organization as it relates to putting a human firewall in place is to ensure that there is effective governance, right? Now, according to the OSEG capability model, this is their depiction of what proper governance looks like, what a proper governance structure depicts, right? So for you to have that security culture or security, that firewall established within the organization, then you must have a proper governance structure in place that is able to lead by example, that is able to build all those teams, that is able to create the culture, the acceptable culture within the organization, where every department persons understand their role, their responsibilities as it relates to security, and the impact that it has on the organization if these safe practices are not carried out in terms of protecting the organization, and the impact that it will have on the employees themselves if they do not abide by these safe practices. So now that we're at the point of launching our human firewall, as a security professional or the CISO undertaking this project, now the aim is to eradicate the weakest link or the blame game cycle. Right? So very important is that a good security culture that enables an effective firewall is one in which all the people within the organization intuitively understands the risks that are associated with their day-to-day activities. And very importantly, knowing and having the confidence to be able to mitigate that risk or under that situation when it arises. Now, a good security culture is one that makes it, right? A good security culture, and according to KPMG Perry says, a good security culture is people being confident and comfortable with information security and not feel that it is a science or black arts, right? So a good security culture is one that makes security accessible. And by accessible, I mean that you ensure that all staff are trained and are speaking the same language when it comes to security, as I had mentioned earlier. Provide the continual awareness training, and this cannot be overemphasized, where you move from that point-in-time presentations and assessments to a steady drumbeat of awareness through the various events, training, videos, podcasts. So you have to come up with creative ways to sensitize and to have employees, persons in the organization appreciate and to value the having that security knowledge and what not abiding by these practices can do to the organization. Right? And importantly, partner with employees on shadow IT. This is normally a challenge in many organizations. Persons will always take devices. Persons always want to do things to get the job done. And so in order to help with this situation, then we have to show persons to mitigate that risk of dangers that can happen, to show persons how they can actually do things better, so that we do not have that sort of a struggle or challenge within the organization where persons become very resentful, but rather appreciate what you are trying to achieve as an organization. And you have to, very important, demonstrate what good looks like. So as it relates to launching that human firewall, before launching your human firewall, then you want to make sure that you have included these essential steps, and that is you want to create a culture of security awareness constantly. You want to put ongoing education and training plans in place for your employees. You want to assess your organization's needs and your employee skills. You want to use data and the feedback that you get from your employees. You have to definitely listen to these persons to get their feedback so that you can make the appropriate changes to make this the training more meaningful and captivating for these persons on a regular basis. And very importantly is that ongoing training is a process that requires constant review and organization to ensure that the best result is achieved. And I will end by saying that of high importance is that for the human firewall to be implemented successfully, it must be treated as a managed and ongoing program within the organization. So with that said, then I now open to any further questions or points of interest that you need any further clarification on at this point in time. Are there any further questions? If not, I will hand over back to you.
Thank you so much. So, everyone, you have any question? You can unmute yourself. So, 3 minutes to ask questions. Hello, everyone. Any question? So you can unmute yourself. Either you can talk or you can just type in there. Hello, Timo. Do you have any other questions before we're going to end?
No.
Okay, Dinesh, are you there?
But thank you for the talk. No questions might also mean that you presented it in a way that all questions have been answered using the talk, right? So it's
Yeah.
it's a good sign.
Okay. Okay, thank you.